Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Nirmon. I'm officially doing a guide for you guys today. This is a little bit out of my category. Normally, I usually do gameplay commentaries and some weapon reviews, but overall, I'm going to try to show you guys, for video game terms, the HD proportion of YouTube. So with that said, guys, I'm just going to show you how to get 1920 by 1080 on YouTube, and I'm going to try to explain it in the best possible way. Again, these are not, in any means necessary, the best settings overall in the entire world. There are thousands of videos on YouTube that try to implement and say these are the best. I would highly recommend, just kind of clicking a couple of videos, getting an average, and then kind of understanding kind of where they're coming from. Again, this is just going to add to the pile of game videos on YouTube that talk about quality, but there are so much you have to take into account that I could not even begin to explain to you guys. So I'm going to try to show you, for Battlefield 3 at least, what I find to be effective. You're going to want to take or put a video into this box. You're going to have all your information here. You're going to want to make sure you pay very close attention to 1, the video, and 2, the frame rate, or the FPS, frames per second. That is the hugest thing to making a video look and perform at its top notch. With that said, you're going to want to take the gameplay, and put it in the box. Now it's going to take up your timeline. It's going to show you how long it is. You're going to do a little bit of editing. You can cut stuff. You can do whatever you need to do for your project. If you're making a commentary, you're probably going to want to synchronize the beginning and the end. Just stuff of that assortment. With that said, you guys are going to want to right-click and go to Properties. Then you're going to disable resample because you don't want your video to resample, because programs by themselves trying to resample usually results in very poor quality. So I highly recommend always disabling. And this will also give you the effect of disabling the ghosting effect. Like if I were to keep it on smart, it'll look all foggy, ghost effect. It'll have that, I can't even think of the word I'm looking for right now, but it'll just have a really bad effect. So always disable. Then, depending on where you are in your project and what your TV records on, if your TV is 1920 by 1080p, then you don't even have to select this. If your TV is like mine and it does 1920 by 1080i, I highly recommend using this, just because when you upload to YouTube, it actually doesn't have an option for 1080i, because that's not what YouTube does. So if you can reduce a little bit of that interlace flicker, which interlace is kind of... it's hard to explain, but it basically reduces quality and it does different things compared to progressive scan. So I highly recommend selecting that if you're on a 1920 by 1080 TV. So we'll go from that. You want to hit OK. It's going to do a little bit, slight adjustments. You're not going to really be able to tell, to be honest with you. But overall, with that said, now this is where we get into our properties. So you're going to want to go up here to this area that says Properties. You can also hit just Alt plus Enter and it should pop the tab up. But I always click it just for, I guess I'm lazy, I guess. So, you're going to want to put your width as 1920, your height as 1080, field order, make sure it's on progressive scan, because YouTube or the internet in general only uses progressive scan. Progressive scan is something you find on the internet. It doesn't, if you were to making a commercial for TV or something, you'd want to screw with these depending on what your project says. Mine says upper field first. That's what I'd select if I was making a TV ad or something of that assortment. But always select progressive scan for the internet. Now this is where the hugest thing comes into play, and I always see so many people that make these videos screw up and tell people wrong, and they're usually just screwing their channel up in a general sense. You're going to want to make sure that you're making sure your frame rates match, okay? See how these are the same? That is good. Don't be stupid and put 30.000 frames per second. That means your properties don't match, and it's going to degrade your quality slightly, but let's say I've had videos that have 120.0 frame per second. That is huge. Do not type 120 frames per second in this box. YouTube only, if you're uploading to YouTube, that is. I don't know if you're uploading to some other site or something, you'll have to see what their overall policy is. But YouTube in general only allows 30.000 frames per second, okay? So with that said, if yours is 120 and you have to get this to 30, you just type in 30 frames per second. Don't type in 120 or 60 or anything like that. Anything that is higher than 30 frames per second, downgrade it on this little box to 30 frames per second. So with that said, guys, now that we've accomplished that goal or whatever, now these are the same. There's no such thing as 3D usually for YouTube. I don't know a whole lot of things that use 3D scope mode, so you could screw with that. You don't need to do anything with that. I think that's more for like video stuff if you're going to make a movie or some kind of commercial or something of that assortment. 32-bit floating point full range. That is huge. You're going to want that. 1.0 linear, don't go to this one, that 2.2 repeating. You're going to want to have this off. For anyone that's in like an art or knows a lot about video stuff, these are just basically they change the color of the screen. I'll give you an example. I'll select that one. See how that turns blue? They just do different things. Don't select those. Just keep them off. You're going to want to make sure your rendering quality is on best, because that, obviously you want your quality to really show in a video. You're going to want to have Gaussian, and depending on, again, if you have 1920 by 1080p or 1920 by 1080i, if you have I usually do interpolated fields, or you can try blended, but I've had a lot of problems with that, still stretching the quality. If you're on P, you're fine, just select none. With that said, you will probably have this box selected right when you jump into your first time using this program, or maybe you've used it a few times and you just don't know what this does. I usually disable this because if the program has the ability to do whatever it needs to do, if it has the ability to change any of your settings, it's going to do those without hesitation. So I usually want my stuff to stay exactly how I have it. I don't want the frame rate to go from 30 frames to 15 frames back up to 17 frames. Just keep it. Don't allow it to adjust. I would highly recommend do not allow it to readjust. If you constantly record by 1920 by 1080, you can start all projects with these settings, but that just depends on you personally. We're going to go to the audio tab now, and this is what I personally use for audio. There are thousands of videos that tell you otherwise, and you can do whatever you need to do. If you're making a video on a video game, you can obviously see for the audio it's 48K. You can probably just select that. I use 192,000 for some reason. This is probably because I use that for my final render process. Your bit rate, or bit depth, I'm sorry, you're going to want to use about 24. It's going to start you on 16. If you like that, you can keep it. Again, you guys can try just having a minute worth of footage and then screwing with it. It shouldn't take you too long to render, anywhere between a minute to a minute and a half for about a minute. So again, it's all about experimentation. Always experiment before you just believe what somebody says, because it's easy to make a video and tell you guys that this is the best, and then you guys do it and you wasted 3 hours on a render. So with that said, you guys are pretty much done with your stuff. More or less, you can go into VideoFX. You can kind of look in this stuff, put stuff. You just want to click it. I'm just going to show you. I'm actually not going to put this in here for the sake of matter. Just drag it in here. It took me so long to figure that kind of stuff out, and looking back, I look like an idiot for not figuring that out. But when you drag it in, it'll bring up new windows. You can screw with your volume levels, your master volume, and your dB volume, which is how loud or quiet something gets. So with that said, guys, we're going to jump into the next step. This is actually where you put all that information we just typed into effect now. A lot of people will tell you to go to Main Concept, AVC, AAC. I've had problems with that before, and it seems like quite a bit of people have in the past as well. You can try it personally. Just remember, use a small amount of footage if you're going to try it. When I tried it, it actually stretched the image and was giving me these like super boxy looking lines and stuff. So I try to go to Windows Media. I do realize it's not the best in the entire world, as people have told me before, but it's makes the quality look better than having these giant boxes sticking all over your screen. So with that selected, go to 8 megabytes per second and then go to Customize Template. This is where you can adjust more settings and make your overall video look a lot better. So we're going to just keep all this stuff how it is. We're going to go to this one if you're using 1920 by 1080. If you're not, select whatever box and adjust from that standard point. You're going to want to type in 1920. You're going to want to go 1080 should probably already be selected. And then you're going to want to go to this box and change this to 1. I don't know why 1.3 repeating is still here, and I don't know why it tells you to HD 1080, but if you do that, it's going to give you these lines either on the side or on the top, depending on, again, how your screen's formatted. So, 1.0. Frame rate, again, huge. You have to keep these the same. If you have 120 frames per second, change it to 30 and make sure it was set in that Properties tab as well. With that said, you're going to want to go to 100% sharpest. You obviously want your video to be really smooth and have the ability to, perform at top notch. Now this is huge, guys. Again, this is probably the biggest thing you can possibly do to your videos. The higher you get in megabytes per second, the higher your file size. Okay, if you're running, 25 frames per second, or I'm sorry, not 25. 25 megabytes per second is what I was trying to tell you guys. That file is going to be anywhere between 1.7 to 2.5 gigabytes. That's huge, okay? That's going to take you a while to upload to YouTube. Unfortunately, I have 100 megabytes per second for internet, so that probably wouldn't take me terribly long, but I presume not everyone's upgraded that far, and that would probably be a safe bet. Depending on what game you're playing, this is also huge. If you play Call of Duty, a lot of the big-time commentators will use anywhere between 6 to 10. If you're playing Battlefield, a lot of the guys will use anywhere between 10 to 15, and from there. I mean, if you play World of Warcraft or anything of that assortment, you could probably get away with anywhere between 8 to 12. So you need to experiment with this. Just slightly go up every once in a while. Don't make a huge push. Don't jump into like 20 and be like, oh, this was going to look great, because the file could be huge and you could probably get away with it only using 12. So with that said, for Battlefield 3, I'm going to type in 15 because I usually go in between 14 to 17. That's usually my prime range. If you're really huge into this and you need this for database kind of purposes, this is where you put all your stuff into. Project, you're going to want to go and select best. Color space, do not touch that crap because it's all weird and it'll change your color on your screen. So with that said, guys, then after that you can just, type in your title and hit render. You don't need to reselect it, just hit render. It's already good for you guys. And with that said, that's how you make a 1920 by 1080 video, and hopefully you guys enjoyed my guide today. If you guys are interested, I will be doing more of these on different purposes. So with that said, this is going to be Nerd Mode On, signing off a little bit early, guys. Peace.